They weren't the best neighbors, I said, taking a quick sip of coffee. But to wish them dead? Jesus, no. They didn't deserve that. The detective, the guy with the notepad, nodded, an understanding look in his eyes. What were they like? Aggressive? Withdrawn? Friendly? The dad was rather shy, but he did send me a hello whenever we crossed paths. Kids were a bit more, not really friendly, but definitely nosy and enjoyed trespassing. They were like little peeping toms, alright? Now the mom, oh man, she was crazy. After a brief silence and the second detective clearing his throat, I continued. Even though the kids were caught both by the neighbors and cameras, the mom would explode, yelling and crying that we were picking on the kids. She enabled them like there was no tomorrow. I took another sip. The Treierweilers weren't that popular, huh? The second guy asked. No, sir, I said. But I don't think they would make anyone that mad to resort to murder. I leaned forward, eyes wide. I'm sorry if I can't find you any suspects. It's quite alright, the first detective responded, jotting down what he said. He glanced up. Even though he wore a mask, I could see the grin on his face. We're not asking you to go out and arrest the murderer. After taking a moment to chuckle, he sobered up and asked, Can you tell us what you remember about the day the Treierweilers allegedly moved out? I nodded. Oh, definitely. I'd spend time in my living room. Through the windows, you could see the inside of their house and their front yard. And I remember seeing the moving truck and men wearing overalls, moving the boxes. They worked for several hours, and I had an appointment at the dentist. When I came back, the truck was gone. I didn't see the kids, mom or dad. Do you know if they were actually moving? The second guy asked. I scratched my head. I actually don't know. You'd think there'd be a sign up in front, or people coming in to look at the house. But I saw nothing. I'm pretty observant, so I would have noticed that kind of activity. Thank you for your time, the first guy said, finishing what he was writing. He got out of his chair and handed me his business card. If you remember anything else, please call us. If we need any more information, we'll contact you. Of course, I said, getting up from my chair as well and escorting the detectives to the front door. Take care. When they climbed into their car and drove off, I closed the door and groaned. It was such a pain to have to deal with this. I remember the first day the Treierweiler family moved in. I had been in the house for a year and woke up one day to see a for sale sign being taken down. And a few days later, a moving truck pulled up in front of the house. Like many others who could see the house, we hovered by our windows, watching with bored curiosity on who the new family would be. When the heavy boxes started becoming smaller, I stepped out of the house and wandered over to the property line, calling a greeting to the family. I felt a little hurt when only the father, Richard Treierweiler, only gave me one little nod. The children, the 3 boys, were already inside, but the mom, Diana Treierweiler, refused to look my way. I chalked it up to them having to do a lot of work, having a lot of stress on moving, and not wanting to deal with nosy strangers. But after a month of them living in the neighborhood, I started to feel offended and stopped trying to be friendly. I was not the only one who grew offended at the cold shoulder treatment. Even the grouchy couple who didn't interact with the rest of the neighborhood grew upset that no one in the family even gave them a passing glance. The kids must have grown bolder after 3 months. One early morning, I was in the kitchen making coffee and nearly dropped the ground coffee upon seeing a little boy's face in my kitchen window, staring at me with huge eyes. I had been looking down at the coffee maker and noticed movement in the window. When I looked up, I hadn't been expecting the little boy to be in the window. Then, later that day, Elena, a young woman, came to me in a huff. Despite the 2 of us being different genders and different backgrounds, We were friendly and trusted each other. Those damn brats, she shouted. I was doing yoga in my living room, in my yoga pants and sports bra, and turned to see those kids spying on me. She tugged on her hair, threatening to pull it out. Yeah, I said. Wincing and forcibly removing her hands from her hair, I found one of the boys peeking into my window too. The Johnsons also found the youngest boy snooping through their backyard, Elena continued, scowling at me. Digging up their flowers. God, I hate families like that. If I harassed my neighbors like that, my father would have sent me to the moon. Ditto, I said. Unfortunately, with the kids out of their shells, so too was Miss Trierweiler. One of our neighbors, 2 blocks down, had stormed up to the house, a death grip on the older boy's arm. Get out here! The man yelled at their house, and Miss Trierweiler stormed out. What the hell are you doing to my son? She had shrieked, running up to the man. Unhand him. I'll call the police. Do it, the man hollered, shoving the boy forward. I caught this boy throwing rocks at my dog. I have the incident on camera. Miss Trierweiler absolutely lost it and started berating the man for accusing her precious son of trying to harm an animal. As expected, she called the police to try and get the man in trouble. However, that only resulted in the cops taking the man's side. After all, he did have the footage to prove his accusation. One could argue that one incident started a deep rift between the neighborhood and the Trierweiler house. Although many folks here don't get along, we all agree on one thing. We don't like people who hurt animals. In the present day, I stood in my backyard, watering my garden. However, my attention would drift to the backyard on the other side of my fence. Police tape roped off the back porch. I remember what happened that day the bodies were discovered. After the Trierweilers had moved away, a new family, 2 women with a baby girl, had moved in. They were sweet and nice, much more tolerable than the Trierweilers. Courtney had decided to redo the porch and started tearing it up. I was sleeping in, but woke up to the sound of her screaming. With a mad scramble, I ran down my steps and ran to the backyard. I caught sight of Courtney fleeing into the house rather stupidly. I jumped the fence and moved towards where the torn up porch was. Peering down, I gasped at what I saw. 5 bodies, from largest to smallest, were wrapped up in black tarp. I could faintly smell the scent of decay. The police had been called immediately. I could already tell the police and detectives were starting to become annoyed that there seemed to be no leads on the suspects. Through the grapevine, I heard they interviewed the guy whose dog got attacked by the older son, but he was in the clear since he had been out of town when the family, well, I wouldn't say disappeared, since no one really knows when they perished, but regardless, he was in the clear. The whole neighborhood resumed their normalcy, but I could see the way they tensely walked past the house next door, not because they were guilty and didn't want to draw attention, but because, well, who wouldn't feel uneasy walking past a murder house? A few weeks passed since I had been interviewed by the detectives. They did call me several times, asking me questions they came up with, but I provided no other answer to their questions. After all, as I explained to them on the 5th call, after I realized the family wasn't very friendly, I stopped paying attention to what they were doing. I was in my front yard stretching. The summer heat had died down, and I wanted to enjoy the outside world without feeling like I was going to melt. Hey, a male voice called, and I turned my head to find Thomas Waller, standing on his side of the yard. Despite being 25 and working at the police station, he still lived with his parents. Get over here, I want to talk. I rolled my eyes and walked across the grass. Hey dude, I greeted. Hey man, he greeted back. Glancing around, he lowered his voice. Rumor is the detectives are planning on shelving the case. It's gonna be a cold case. He gave me a dirty look as I opened my mouth. Yeah. Like the show. Now shut up. I plan on spreading the word to the others in the neighborhood. Isn't it? I don't know, I hesitated, trying to summon up the knowledge I had on the inner workings of detective work. Too soon to be making it a cold case? Thomas shrugged his shoulders. I don't know, man. I just take the calls. You sure are helpful, I said. Don't make me punch you. A neighborhood meeting had been called. We all met at Gertrude's house. Old, sharp, and authoritative. Gertrude was around 60. Or so the rumor says. We can't agree on her age. I don't know much about her, other than her family had built the neighborhood. Her family had history of being in power, of ruling the neighbors with an iron fist, kind of like modern monarchy. I've heard whispers, she announced once we settled down on our chairs. We held meetings in her spacious basement, that the case has been shelved due to the lack of leads. She paced around the room. As you know, she paused dramatically and looked at us. The police had been snooping around the neighborhood, and nosy detectives sticking their nose into our business. I'm proud that you all gave away nothing. What was there to give away? Someone joked, hearing some chuckles. Gertrude rolled her eyes, as did her older son Hunter. He took her spot on the floor. The neighborhood relies on harmony and peace. Had the Trierweilers been decent, they wouldn't have perished. But due to their actions, they had to be dealt with. Elena raised her hand. Hey, what did you do to the family's belongings? I could tell her eagerness, that she was hoping to get her hands on some stuff. We donated their clothes to those in need, Hunter said. As for the furniture, we shipped that to an organization across the pond. They need that furniture for poor families. As for the personal belongings that are unique, we destroyed them. Remind me to never make you mad, I said. I feel like I'm in the mafia. Maybe we are in the mafia, the woman next to me laughed. Mafia, no more booze to sell, so now they haunt neighborhoods. Once more, Hunter rolled his eyes. Alright, folks. Remember to keep the neighborhood in harmony, and we won't have any problems. Take care getting home safely. I waited for everyone to leave the basement, before making my way over to Gertrude and Hunter. So, I said, lowering my voice, who actually killed them? Curiosity was eating away at me. Thomas had whispered to me that mysteriously their hearts had stopped beating. That was their only cause of death. And no drugs had been discovered in their system, and no visible injuries that could reveal what happened. Gertrude and Hunter exchanged cold smiles that made my skin crawl. You don't want to know, she said.